Good evening, members. Welcome to the October meeting of AAUW Findlay Branch. I would first this evening like to give anyone an opportunity who either has brought a guest or who is a guest this evening for this very special program. Do we have any guests of our members? Yes, well, we do. Yes, and we have a University of Findlay student who we're very happy to welcome. Would you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're studying at the university?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kristen Heidinger, and I actually work here. So I'm the Student Success Coordinator. I work in the Success Center, and I help students who are doing poorly in their classes and try to bring their grades up and get them to our tutoring services or academic support services.
Welcome. We're so happy that you are here on this special evening. Are there other guests with us? Yes. Would like to formally introduce Dr. Fell's administrative assistant. Is that the correct type? Executive administrative assistant, Elizabeth. Ditto, and she goes by Liz. And although Liz has only been at the university a short time, I can be one of the first people to testify she is the most helpful and gracious guide and help that we're just so happy. Liz, welcome, and we're happy to have you here tonight, and just welcome all the way around. And we also have with us in the back coverage from UFTV, and we are in hopes of having perhaps just a little bit later some additional media. So if you see someone walking in that you may not be acquainted with, you'll know that it's probably one of the members of the media. We are not the only group meeting this evening, and there's a school board meeting and so forth, and so some of the media folks are dividing their time, and we hope to see some of them just a little bit later. At this time, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce to you someone, trite as the phrase may be, who needs no introduction. How many times have we been to meetings and heard that phrase? But perhaps tonight you will forgive me for using it, because this lady, our speaker, is so special to all of us that technically maybe she needs no introduction, but we will give her a short one in any event. Dr. Catherine Rove Fell became the 17th president of the University of Findlay on July 1st of 2010. During Dr. Fell's tenure, the University of Findlay has enhanced experiential learning, emphasized community service, and intercultural opportunities for its students. Undergraduate and graduate enrollments have increased, with a significant increase in international student enrollment. Fundraising has reached record levels. And parenthetically, if you saw the Courier headline today in the paper, we want to offer congratulations to the university for reaching a huge fundraising milestone. So indeed, the fundraising component for the university continues. Dr. Fell previously had served as the Vice President of Advancement at Centenary College in Shreveport, Louisiana, where she had also been the Chief Development Officer since 2000. She began her tenure at Centenary in 1986 in the Department of English. A native of Stamps, Arkansas, she holds her Bachelor of Science degree in education in English, with a minor in speech from Southern Arkansas University, Magnolia, Arkansas, and a Master of Arts in English from Louisiana Technical University in Russia. She completed her PhD in English from Texas A&M University at College Station. Dr. Fell and her husband Roger are the parents of 6 children. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to all of you our keynote speaker for the evening, Dr. Catherine Fell. Dr.
Very kind of you. And I'm delighted to be back with you, of course. It seems as if we're among friends here, and we see one another at a number of events throughout the year. And I am, of course, delighted to have with me Liz Ditto, who has taken the role that Meg Flumian once held, but Meg took retirement, and we wish her well. I think she's enjoying her retirement, and Liz is doing a great job, and I'm very happy to have her. She doesn't always wear sunglasses, but she's just having a minor eye issue, and you know, ordinarily she's not here as Secret Service or anything. So I do want to briefly mention a number of factors regarding the opportunities for women in higher education, and then certainly give you time for some discussion and questions. This morning, when Jillian and I appeared this morning when Jillian and I met with Chris Oakes at WFIN, he announced that my talk tonight was on violence against women. And I am opposed to violence against women, but I wasn't planning to spend a lot of time talking about it. But I will make a few comments about it, and then we'll move on to opportunities for women in higher education. But thank you again for inviting me to speak about these opportunities. AAUW itself has done much to promote education and leadership among women since its inception in 1881. That's a long time. 1 year older than the University of Findlay. None of you are, but your organization is. For example, AAUW is one of the world's largest sources of funding for graduate women. It is providing more than $3.7 million in funding for more than 241 fellowships and grants to outstanding women and nonprofit organizations in 2015-2016 academic year, this very year. This evening we'll take a few minutes to discuss issues and opportunities regarding women in leadership, in particular in higher education. Women, like men, can thrive in higher education as students, faculty, and staff, of course, only when they have a safe environment. And this is an issue that we are mindful of, certainly at the University of Findlay and on every college and university campus in America. So it is worthy of note, and I really understand why Chris mentioned it this morning, because it is essential that we have safety in order to thrive and to grow in leadership. And you can see these statistics. They're alarming. And I won't read them to you. I think you can read them, and I'll certainly be happy to make them available to you for your files or records or to review. But we do have an issue on college campuses and in our culture, not just on campuses in America, but in our culture. And you, I know, as an organization, are helping to fight this epidemic. At the University of Findlay, we are too. I'm very proud of our work on this topic. We've established policies and procedures to respond to and investigate reports of sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking. We were awarded a grant from the Office of Violence Against Women, $280,000, and with that we have done a great deal of work. We've reduced barriers to reporting and increased services available to victims. We've conducted online and in-person training for students, faculty, and staff. We have established an on-campus advocate office for victims in partnership with Open Arms. We've trained healthcare nurses to conduct physical examinations of victims and to collect evidence appropriately of sexual assault. And we are establishing ongoing and robust awareness campaigns to keep students engaged in reducing the number of these occurrences on our campuses. And we're doing this for men and women. Men, too, are the victims of sexual assault. more regularly than you can imagine. Sometimes it's men against men, sometimes it's women against men. It happens. And we are very aware of it, and we are very careful to educate our students. Now, understand that this is not ordinary assault, as in stranger assault or predators or serial rapists. That's not what we're talking about. Typically, it's people who are just letting their behavior get out of control. It's between people who know one another. So it's not exactly the same thing as having a criminal stalk your neighborhood. Okay, so understand that. I don't want you to be afraid walking to your cars this evening. It's not that, but it is an issue. We have a highly sexualized culture, and we can't hide our heads in the sand and pretend we don't. And so we're trying to do our very best to keep our students, faculty, and staff safe. And I think we're doing a good job at Findlay. I really do. I'm very proud of the policies and protocols we have in place, and I think they're working. Do we have a perfectly safe environment? No one does. But I think we are doing everything within our power to keep our students safe and well educated. So with that environment, I think we are able to provide a space, a campus where students, faculty, and staff can grow into their full potential and certainly become great leaders of higher education. And at our campus, we have 586 full-time employees. 331 of those are women. So that means 56% of our employees, full-time employees, are women. Our students, 62% of our students, undergraduate students, are women. We have 223 female staff full-time and 146 male staff. Among full-time faculty members, it's about half and half. 109 male faculty and 108 female faculty. On a number of campuses, it's skewed a bit. And I'm happy to say that in our upper levels of the professoriate, full-time professor and associate professor, it's almost half and half. So I think we have done a good job over the years of being careful to give everyone an opportunity to be promoted based on merit, not on any other factor, just merit. So we have a number of high-level women leaders on campus. When the cabinet and I gather, the vice presidents and other major leaders and I gather, 4 of us are women and 4 are men. Works well, and I like them all. I'm happy to report. It's a great team, and I think that balance of personalities and perspectives is very helpful. When the deans gather, 6 of them, 3 are men, 3 are women. And you can see on the chart that which colleges have women deans. 3 of our women professors offered these reflections on women in higher education. Courtney Bates in the English department had this to say: "The opportunities and challenges for women in higher education today are to me one and the same. The call to action offered by intersectionality," now remember she's an English professor, intersectionality, a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. "Many kinds of inequality contribute to the challenges that women face, and we cannot improve the life of women without reaching across social divides such as race, sexual orientation, class, ability, and disability, and so on. When we widen the circle of both people included in the challenges and solutions, many shoulders set to the wheel of improvement, difference that may have seemed difficult to address becomes relevant to all." Jill Paxton, Director of Equestrian Programs, made these comments. For opportunity, she said this: "I hate to admit my age, but I began teaching and coaching at a university in 1974. At that time, women's athletics was under AIAW, and Title IX was only a concept. Since that time, I have seen the opportunities for women in higher education grow exponentially. In my opinion, the future for women in higher education is filled with opportunity. There are so many more women of strength and character working successfully in higher ed. These are women who are passionate about the opportunities available to future generations through education. They are the doorway to our successful tomorrows. Deborah Parker, professor and dean in the College of Pharmacy, made this observation: I certainly see a bright future for women in higher education. My personal career in higher ed has been very rewarding. Necessary skills, being a good negotiator, and hand in hand with that comes the need to be a good communicator. Time management is important for everyone, but for women in leadership roles, especially if they are juggling raising children as well as a full-time job, in which students expect 24/7 access these days, this can be very challenging. Setting realistic expectations and taking time for yourself is important. So 3 of our own leaders here on campus had very good insights. One more of our leaders. In June of this year, the university, after a national search, announced its first woman athletic director, Brandy Larita. Many of you know her. Brandy has served as an assistant athletic director and has had extensive experience in coaching and college sports administration. So in summary, the University of Findlay, your university, is committed to providing opportunities for both men and women to achieve at their highest potential. I'd like to turn your attention now to a few trends among women leaders in higher education beyond just the University of Findlay. According to the American Council on Education, ACE, only 26% of college presidents are women. The typical American university president is a married white male who is 61 years old, holds a doctorate in education, and has served in his current position for 7 years. Dr. Susan Madsen, professor of leadership and ethics at Woodbury School of Business, Utah Valley University, has compiled a list of attitudes, skills, and characteristics of women university presidents in her book, Becoming a Woman Leader. The major themes are listed here, and you can see them. Avid readers as children, strong learners, and accomplishment-oriented, love to get things done, check off list. I suspect that's true of just about every one of you. You look like list people to me. Most were competitive. None had planned from an early age to become a president. They worked hard, did the best at everything they did, and I like this one, smiled in the face of challenges. I wonder how much I'm going to grow from this one. Dr. Madsen found that once women actually became university presidents, they developed some integral skills. Processing feedback constructively seems to be something that's extremely important in the role of president. That won't surprise you. It's important in every role. Giving and receiving feedback, thinking rationally through all feedback given, learning how to forgive, holding your grudge got them nowhere. Sounds like Sunday school, doesn't it? But as it turns out, it works. Learning that you don't have to push every wall down. I like that one too. Sometimes they went around the wall and just kept going. I often remember all those years I was the only woman in that very southern old boy English department down south in Louisiana. And I remember thinking, you know, these guys really don't have anything I want, so I'm just not going to fight with them. I'm just going to go about my job and go around this wall. And these were old boys that I actually had a lot of affection for. But so I found our common ground and worked around the places where we disagreed, and it all worked out fine. So I like the fact that you don't always have to push every wall down. A few you do. You really have to fight, but not every single one. And a little more information, top 7 pieces of advice from women college presidents. Prepare early, become proactive in your own career development, become a lifelong learner, develop strength and trust in self, embrace challenges, develop general leadership competencies, and look beyond yourself. And that, I would say, all of that advice is good advice, and you don't have to have in mind that you're going to become a president to follow it and benefit from it. You're not always sure what's going to come next. It could be something better than being a president. There are things out there other than that. And motherhood seems to have its perks. It's not a disadvantage, in fact. to most women presidents who've been mothers, but in fact an advantage. And Madsen would say women need to embrace what they have done, including motherhood, and own it. And of course, I think you and certainly I would agree with that. I have often said that after teaching 6 children to drive, running a university seems easy. I do remember getting out of the car and walking into my office about 10 till 8 on some school mornings after one of our sons early in his driving career dropped me off, and thinking, if I don't become an alcoholic now, I never will. And I didn't. All leaders, men and women, bring all that they are to their positions. I asked one of our only daughter, of those 6 children, there's only one daughter, so you might just want to stop and say a prayer for her right now. But in any case, her name is Julia. I asked her to send me her thoughts on the experience of having a mom in higher education in a way that I might share with all of you. And she had this to say: I've never thought of my mom as a career woman, and I still don't. She's my mom, and she worked to feed us, as far as I was concerned, as a young, oblivious child. My husband, her father, also worked to feed them. I now see benefits I reaped as the daughter of an English professor and later a college administrator. I have really, really good grammar. She does. And I got to see how manly folding laundry could be, as that became my dad's domestic duty. And perhaps best of all, there was tuition exchange. She goes on to say, I've never doubted my position close to the center of her heart. In reflecting on my mother's career, I realized that academia can be both the pursuit of a passion and a practical way of loving and caring for children. And I think you could say that for any career. My mom made each career move for the sake of, not in spite of, her family. In the meantime, not only was I fed, but I was also able to see in my mother an example of a woman using her gifts in whatever circumstance God placed her. My mother's career has shown me that a woman can be genuinely joyful on the sidelines of a soccer game or humbly wiping spilled milk, while also having a voice in the ivory towers of academia. I've learned from my mother that the intellectual world is open to me as a woman, no matter what practical form my intellectual passions take. Much of what we have learned, and that's the end of Julia's commentary, much of what we have learned about women leaders in higher education is reflected in women leaders in business and politics as well. And you'll see, based on a survey of 1,835 random adults, the Pew Research Center reports that the largest percentage of respondents, 40%, felt having children later in her career increased a woman's chances of success. This increases to 41% when just the women's responses are counted. I'm not sure that I completely agree with that, actually. It certainly wasn't the path I took, or I would have never gotten to 6. But because in my career, it seems to me that it was easier to have young children when I was young in my career, but I was a faculty member and had a much more flexible schedule at that time than I did in later positions. But if you start out without having in a career other than being a professor in a college, you might not have the flexibility I had. And so I can see that you would have, in most careers, you would have far less control of your own calendar early in your career and more control later. So I can see that for some careers that might very well be true, especially in the business world. But for me, that was not the case. And as my husband says, we were both 26 when we married. He said, if we had married young in life, we might have had a large family. So there wasn't going to be any waiting. Recent studies seem to conclude that in order for women to achieve leadership positions in higher education or in the corporate world, they must truly desire the position they are aspiring to and allow themselves to take risks when necessary. And that is important. I think all of you would agree with that. No matter what your area of work is, you do have to be willing to put yourself out there and take risks, and risk some public defeats or some public mistakes. If you're shy of that, then this kind of job is definitely not something you would enjoy or be comfortable at doing, and that's fine. But you don't have to. But if you want to be a leader, a high-level leader in business, politics, or education, you're going to take public risks. You just want to make sure that you do it with integrity and you can live with it if it doesn't work out. This theory is reiterated in a September 2015 article in the Wall Street Journal entitled, "What's Holding Women Back in the Workplace?" You'll see the quotation here. "Equal numbers of men and women say they want to be promoted, but as men's desire for big jobs intensifies in the course of their careers, only 43% of women say they want to be a top executive, compared with 53% of men, for various reasons." We might talk about what those reasons might be. In January 2015 report, Women in Leadership, the Pew Research Center revealed the results of a survey that asked why there aren't more women in top executive business positions and high political offices, and you can see some of the answers. What's holding women back from top executive positions? 43% of the respondents said women are held to higher standards than men. 43% said they're not ready to hire or elect women leaders, that the public isn't ready. 23% said family responsibilities don't leave enough time. 9% women are not tough enough. 7% women don't make as good managers. And then in high political offices, 38% say that women are held to higher standards. 37% not ready to elect women, the public is not. 17% family responsibilities hold them back. 8% women are not tough enough. And nobody seems to think management matters in politics. I don't know. They might be right. Well, let's don't get on that. Thank goodness friendly media are here. Only friendly media. Okay. So it is true that with all the advances and all the higher education opportunities for women, there are still fewer women in top executive positions than men across the spectrum. Business, politics, and higher education. And I don't have the definitive answer on why. But there are lots of surveys and lots of research that we can look at together to try to determine why and whether what might change in the future. Let's take a look at this one. When it comes to characteristics that apply specifically to political and business leadership, most Americans don't distinguish between men and women. But among those who do draw distinctions, women are perceived to have a clear advantage over men in some key areas, which seems to contradict. So why aren't they rising to the top? I don't know. All right, working out compromises. Women are better. Being honest and ethical, working to improve the U.S. quality of life, and standing up for beliefs. Women seem to be considered better. This is not. I'm not saying they are, but they are perceived as better at those things than men by this percentage of folks on the left here. No difference though, 55%, 62, 68, 63, that's pretty interesting. That's pretty high that they're considered about equal in those characteristics. Then in business, the percent saying women or men in top positions are better at being honest and so forth, you can see, and no difference. Again, pretty high level of people who see no difference to the far right there. Interesting statistics. We could talk about what that means, and I'll give you the opportunity to offer your opinions when we conclude. But there are equal worries for men and women, for all people who care about their families and friends and their personal lives. They're equal concerns. And according to the Wall Street Journal article that I mentioned earlier, worries about balancing work and family life rank among the biggest deterrents for both men and women in aiming for an executive role. And I talk to people, men and women, often who are thinking about moving up a rank or eventually becoming presidents at universities or colleges. And I never discourage them, but I do ask them some questions because there are some very smart, very capable, fine leaders who are at the level where they will be most happy, men and women. It's really, as far as I'm concerned, has nothing to do with gender. The question you have to ask yourself is, will you enjoy the new responsibilities? Not can you do it, not could you do it if forced. Most of them could do it if forced. They could. But will they enjoy it? And there is much about being a CEO of any organization that is very public. And there are a lot of very smart, very creative, deliberative, collaborative leaders who don't want their lives to be that public. Not because they're doing anything to be embarrassed by, but they need more privacy. It is a question you have to ask yourself. Do you want the media there when you're going to give a presentation? Most of the time. A lot of people are not comfortable with that. That is a perfectly legitimate question and answer to give. I am not comfortable with that. So there could be some very smart reasons not to try to move to the top, and other reasons that perhaps are not fair. And I suspect it's all true of various individuals. But I would say, too, that whatever position you find yourself in, there is no such thing really as a work-life balance. There is only life. We are living here. We are developing relationships. If you don't find pleasure in your work, you must not have much pleasure, because you spend a lot of time at work. Am I right, Liz? I think I'm right. You have to find pleasure at work as well as at home. And you bring everything, all of your experiences from the past and present, and all your hopes and dreams for the future in your personal life, as well as your professional life, to both. And certainly you need there's certain conduct that is becoming at the office, and more casual conduct of becoming at home. Certainly, you know how to maneuver those spaces appropriately if you're successful. But one informs the other without question, and should. And I think to recognize that and not see them in conflict all the time is a very healthy approach to work and life. So I wanted to just conclude with a couple of experiences of mine as examples of how the accumulation of events, challenges, and opportunities over a lifetime can shape our future and may play a role in preparing any one of us to emerge as leaders in ways we may not even know. But I do try to remember every day that all of us, the people with whom I work and I, are whole people. We're mind, body, and spirit, and each must inform the other all day, every day, to be truly joyful and purposeful, even when things are frustrating and challenging and you don't know the answer to the question. But let me just give you a couple of examples from my own past that sort of got me where I am, and then I'm going to open it up and listen to you, answer questions, and I may have a few questions for you as well. But I would say my journey to the presidency at the University of Findlay began in the 7th grade. Could have begun earlier, but I'd say 7th grade. My best childhood friend was Jewel Turner. And her mother, our Girl Scout troop leader, decided that now that we Scouts were in junior high school, we were ready for some classes in poise and grace. She invited an old friend of hers from modeling days to conduct the classes and offered them to anyone interested and willing to pay the $20 fee. Thus, charm came to Stamps, Arkansas. It did not stay very long. But during the 6-week on-the-road course offered by Mr. Lynn's Charm School of Shreveport, Louisiana, the girls of Stamps Junior and Senior High Schools tried to do things right. "You going?" Julius had asked me every day since we had heard that Mr. Lynn was bringing his class to town. Yes, my mother had finally consented. The course cost $20, but I was going. My mother had been hesitant to spend the money, but Martha Mercer's mother convinced her that if she didn't let me go then at age 13, while I was yet shapeable, the opportunity might not arise again. So charm school began fine. Every Monday night we learned that our bodies were lovely stems, our arms leaves, and our faces blooms. We were to stand with the heel of one foot placed next to the ball of the other foot at a 45-degree angle. We were to sit without leaning forward as we placed our bottoms on chairs. We were to walk straight, shoulders back, head high. We practiced not only regular walking with books on our heads, but also duck walking. on it goes. We were warned that if we brushed our teeth without also brushing our tongues, we would have bad breath and never get dates. We were shown a film strip of a model who could apply her makeup in only 12 minutes. We learned the aesthetic value of slanting both our legs in the same direction when they were crossed. We were to smile always, even at funerals. We did not question, we absorbed, and we smiled. One evening, one of Mr. Lynn's assistant models lectured on body composition and the horrors, for some of us, of fabric with horizontal stripes. She measured our wrists to determine whether our bone structure was small, medium, or large. As she circled my wrist with the measuring tape, I prayed, "Dear God, don't let her say I'm big boned." Medium, she said, medium. Of course, Jewel was small. Between Mondays at school, we practiced. We critiqued one another's walk from one classroom to another. The home economics teacher, Mrs. Fallon, and Mrs. Turner, Jewel's mother, the scout leader, were taking the course too. They wore heels and hose to a basketball game. Even my cousin Wanda Lee, not generally given to charm, smiled in the halls. This is the same cousin who only a few years earlier had regularly sat behind me in church so that she could pull the sashes of my dress behind my seat and tie them together so tightly that I thought my ribs would be crushed. Mr. Lynn had done what years of church camp had failed to do. Made Wanda Lee a pleasant person, but it didn't last. I was thinking charm school was the smartest $20 my mother had ever spent until the final night test time. It was not going to be a written exam. That would have been easy. It was not going to be a demonstration of walking, sitting, and glove-wearing skills. That would have been easy. It was going to be an assessment of our looks from the stem up. We wouldn't have to do anything, just look good. I was better at doing things. My stem wasn't great, and my face had not bloomed, but the real problem was the one that had plagued my elementary school years, my hair. I had taught myself to ignore my hair. But that night I wouldn't be able to ignore it. It would be evaluated. Making A's was important to me, but this was a test I could not study for. I tried. I shampooed my hair 3 times, rolled it, sat under my mother's dryer, parted it in the middle, looked dull. Parted it on the right side to make the cow look planned. It did not. Parted it on the left side, looked like my math teachers. I went back. She was 42. I went back to the middle and brushed the ends under about 40 times all the way around. I put on my Easter dress and strawberry lip gloss lipstick and thought maybe I looked okay. By the time I arrived, I felt not only ugly but also stupid. In charm school, ugly is stupid. We lined up for final inspection. Mr. Lynn worked his way down the line. He came to Jewel just before he got to me. I really was stupid for standing by Jewel. He complimented her on her many perfections. Then he came to me. He smiled and said something nice about my eyes, but he squinted slightly as his glance took in my hair. He gently reminded me that hair needs body and bounce to be the finishing touch it was meant to be for all us blossoms. Then he moved to the next girl. I did not cry, but I stopped smiling. I decided then and there that Mr. Lynn and I were finished, and that real school, not charm school, was for me. And that worked out just fine. Fast forward several years, about 10 years into my career in the English department at Centenary of Louisiana, a Methodist liberal arts college, I began to move one project at a time from faculty to fundraising and greater levels of administrative responsibility. I did not know at that time that it would move me to the Midwest and a fine university in Findlay, Ohio. I wish I had known that, but I didn't. During the teaching years, I developed friendships, often played the role of a diplomat in campus politics, and came to understand the power of teaching students you know well. That early experience prepared me for the opportunities and challenges of later roles. A rather difficult task each year was grading the first set of essays in first-year English composition classes. Students seldom received the grades they believed they deserved. In fact, one student, upon receiving her graded essay, went to the telephone in front of the classroom no cell phones available in those days, and class was still in session, to call her mother on the spot, where fighting back tears, she exclaimed that I had given her a C in front of the entire class. She called her mother. You think helicopter-packed parents are a new thing. They are not. You will not be surprised to learn that when I returned to my office after class, the mother was on hold, waiting to speak to me. I explained to her, and later that day to the student, that the opportunity for rewriting was available and that I had watched many students steadily improve with each assignment throughout the first semester of college. She did rewrite, and she did improve markedly. Over the next 4 years, the student and I built a good relationship forged in the hard work of teaching and learning. Many such relationships with students sustain and teach me even now, after they and I have moved to new careers. In literature courses, I would often ask students to consider how a well-written story could bring together the experience of the writer, the protagonist, and the reader, and thus become a work of art mysteriously particular to every reader. We spent lively hours discussing the expansion of readers' understanding of themselves and their family and friends because of the insight into humanity's quirks, maledictions, and resilience in literary masterpieces. After an afternoon with one of Flannery O'Connor's stories, for example, we would all be more certain than ever that facing life head-on is not for the faint of heart. An author obsessed with her yard full of peacocks and certain that in them, as in everything, the mysterious offer of God's grace await those who would see. O'Connor convinced us to look hard. In reflecting on whatever literary piece was before us, we gave each other courage to believe that from the mundane hours, the tragic losses, and the happiest moments in our lives, meaning could emerge. In those years as a professor, my days included duties other than teaching. Shared campus governance required that I serve on planning and oversight committees and work closely with leaders throughout campus and beyond. The project that introduced me to fundraising was a proposal for a new cross-disciplinary major in communication. It was an emerging area of interest for our current and prospective students. Colleagues from art, theater, and speech and English worked together on it. The major was approved and it was popular. But for it to flourish, we needed another expert in the field. We needed more money. I learned from experienced professionals in the Office of Development as I watched them raise funds for an endowed chair in communication. One couple we visited lived on a farm where peacocks roamed at will. I was no doubt the only person in the group who thought that a good omen. My role was to offer details about the program during those donor visits, and once the private donations reached $1.2 million, to draft a proposal to the Louisiana Board of Regents for a matching grant. I remember well the meeting I attended with a committee appointed by the Board of Regents to consider proposals for the matching grants. The committee chair asked me, "What is a major in communication?" My answer included a reference to the quadrivium and trivium adjusted for students preparing for the 21st century. Silence ensued. I recall thinking how glad I was to have tenure in the English department. At last he said it was the first time he had ever had it explained that way. And we had an energetic conversation about the field's promise if done well. He seemed genuinely intrigued. I doubt that conversation turned the decision our way, but it turned my thinking about fundraising long before we heard an answer from the state, which eventually did match the gift with $800,000 to establish one of the first super chairs in Louisiana. In that project, I learned that fundraising for a college is not selling a product, but explaining how donors' contributions affect the lives of real students. That project led to the next, an assignment of writing a case statement for a comprehensive campaign, one like the one we've just finished. I saw a campaign case as an institution story with characters in action against the odds. I believed it should capture the past and present and invite readers to join the narrative to create a future better even than all the past victories. The case required months of research and multiple drafts that helped me see our college more clearly, and our graphic designers did an award-winning job on it. A few months later, the campaign was going well, and I was invited to join the Department of Development full-time. Acutely aware by that point of the college's challenges and opportunities, and of the possibility that I could foster relationships with donors that would bring joy to them and funds to our cause, I accepted, and I'm glad I did. Years later, experiences from those faculty and administrative roles at Centenary informed my work as president at the University of Findlay. My time now is divided between providing leadership on campus and developing relationships beyond campus in behalf of the university. Of course, that means raising money and finding people who believe in our cause. As before, I look for donors who know a peacock has more to offer than pretty feathers. And they are here, having sustained UF in the past and carrying it into the future. And I believe we have a team of people at UF who know there's more to a peacock than pretty feathers, and that a student has more to offer than hair with body and bounce. Thank you. Thank you. So let me open up. We have maybe just a few minutes. I don't want to keep you too long, but I'd like to hear any questions you might have or any reflections on some of the facts and figures you've seen, any insights you might have. So I'm yours for at least 10 minutes. Any questions? Your own experiences?
I guess, Dr. Catherine, I'll start it off just by asking you, in the cases where, and this was just a personal experience of mine, when I was being interviewed for law school, and the panel doing the interviewing knew that I was female, and I also told them of having a disability, being legally blind, and I had one panel member who said, "Oh my goodness, if you were black, you would be the perfect candidate."
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question that arises out of that not so positive experience is the situation of the student who has more than one demographic factor, and how does the university encourage that student, even though those factors are there, to really work to their potential?
Well, we have a very effective counseling center and intervention protocol for students who let us know what their disabilities might be or their challenges might be, and we provide all sorts of help. We ask only that the student let us know. And if the student's disability is one that we don't think we can handle, we're honest about that. But we try our best. And I think we invite and educate and graduate students with a number of what might to other students seem like daunting challenges, but they're inspiring to us, and they seem to do well. We would be happy to welcome more. But I will say that all the statistics you see about women in general that as challenged in moving to top levels of leadership, those are multiplied for people with multiple, assessments to their ability, unfair assessments, but assessments to their ability. So for racial minority women, the climb is less likely to happen. For people with learning challenges or other physical challenges, I would say that is also a statistic that makes it harder for them to climb to higher levels of leadership. Why do you think motherhood might be a benefit to leadership? What are some lessons you learned, those of you who are mothers, that might serve in such a capacity?
It certainly grounds you.
Right. Right. Right.
You're not flying up.
Right.
Punishment.
Yeah, exactly. Of course. And humility is a very, very good thing. Nothing good comes from arrogance. There's a huge difference between, of course, confidence and arrogance, and nothing good comes from arrogance. Confidence, fine. Yes?
I think motherhood teaches patience
Mm-hmm.
and also not to overreact to
Right,
situations.
right. Good, very good point. I remember when our children were young and in preschool and elementary school, Roger's career had him traveling a lot. And he'd be gone for a week at a time, once maybe for 4 weeks at a time. And during one of those periods when I was at home taking care of the darling children and trying to do my job too, I had pneumonia, had walking pneumonia, and must have been winter time, and one of those rare days in Louisiana where the weather was really bad and it snowed, and I hadn't put on the radio or television when I first got up to get them all up and ready for school, and then I turned it on and discovered school was canceled that day. It was the worst news. And so I just collapsed on the sofa and rested for a minute, and they were wandering around, and Joseph, who must have been in about the first grade, or possibly second grade, next to the youngest child, said, "Mom, are you going to die?" And I said, "No, Joseph, I'm not going to die." He said, "Well, would you make me a peanut butter sandwich?" And I think actually that sums up presidency, pretty much. I mean, nothing much has changed. So, yeah, I think motherhood teaches you a lot. What else? Yes?
I would like to know how your career has influenced your children and the paths that they have gone.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, we're a very close family, and I think all of our children would echo what Julia said in that Roger and I have worked very hard, but never was there a question of whether our careers were more important to us than our children. But so Roger was a banker for his first career, and 2 of our sons are financial advisors. Our daughter is a Latin teacher at a private high school in Richmond, Virginia. That one son is an attorney, and Samuel, our youngest son, is here finishing up a degree in environmental science. And so I would say they were all comfortable with higher education. They were interested in books and music and theater and redneck things too. You know, it's a very well balanced group of children we have there, and they're all runners, and as is my husband. So, but I would say that they were comfortable and accepted as a fact that they would go to college and be academic, and they all like to read. Julia's aspirations when she was probably in about 4th grade was just to grow up to be a reader. She thought you could just be a reader as a grown-up. She later discovered that might not be possible. But so I mean, I think we all influence our children in ways we're not aware, and in ways they're not aware. I certainly think Julia followed my path more closely, in a more identifiable way than perhaps than the boys did. And she graduated from Millshouse College, which was a sister school to Centenary, and that's in Jackson, Mississippi. And when she graduated and got ready to go to graduate school, Roger said to her, "I didn't think you could find a degree that would make you less employable than classical studies, but you did." And I mean, he was very proud of her and very supportive of it, but he didn't think she'd ever get a job because she took a degree at Wheaton outside of Chicago in general theology. But fortunately for her, during her undergraduate, from high school through all of her college and graduate studies, she studied Latin, and she had tutored and taught Latin, and so she now has a job teaching Latin and loves it. So she did get a job, so there. All right, thank you very much.
Dr. Fell, on behalf of the members of AAUW, we want to extend our thanks to you for your insights and the beautiful blend of humor with very serious topics and very serious items for food for thought, and that is what makes our AAUW programming in general to be special. And we want you to know that it is very meaningful. And while on the subject of thanks, we also want to extend our thanks to you for the many, many important and valuable opportunities that you have given to AAUW Findlay branch to work cooperatively with the university and various members of university staff. And we appreciate so much those opportunities, and certainly want you to know that that makes it very special. At the state board meeting this past weekend, I heard accounts of branches who did not have a strong supportive relationship such as we enjoy. And it just reminded me how very special it is, and we want to do everything that we can to make sure that that relationship continues and that it is strengthened in every way possible. And many, many thanks from all of us. At this point, we'll take a 5-minute break, and we'll try to keep the break short. There are refreshments for you to enjoy, and then we will reconvene for a short business meeting.